Time for Kingdom Hearts 3? Nope. Instead, we're gonna hit the movies included in these collections first. I won't discuss the games they're adapting since I don't have knowledge of them really, but I still felt like it was worthwhile to check out the plots on the channel. So, here's your warning. This is gonna be pretty much all spoilers. We'll start with Kingdom Hearts 358 over 2 days, which might win the award for the most asinine title ever. And yes, it apparently is actually supposed to be 358 instead of 358. Don't ask me why, it's absurd to me. And of course, this is basically the Roxas origin story. And if you've seen my previous reviews, you know exactly how I feel about this whiny little wiener. Now, to be fair, he's slightly more tolerable here. Slightly. He still has very little, if any, motivation, is still a schizophrenic, selfish crybaby, and still has the likability basically that of a toasted urinal cake. But I'll try to cover that over time. However, Days itself isn't a bad story, despite the fact that we have every 12-year-old's terrible OC present for nearly the entire thing. So the story begins with Axel and Roxas sitting on that clock tower reminiscing about stuff that hasn't happened yet. Honestly, I'm not sure why it's framed like this. It doesn't really add anything, and doesn't particularly foreshadow anything epic. But hey, Axel's cool. We then immediately flash back to Organization 13's secret 14th member being introduced. For some reason. I know this sounds like a really stupid thing, but surprisingly they pull it off over the course of the story. And then Roxas flashes back to his own introduction. Come on, I just started and we already have a flashback and a flashback. God damn it, nobody wants Roxasception. Can't you do anything right? Honestly, this lasts for all of like 5 seconds. Xemnas gives a creepy grin back to 14's introduction, and I guess it's just to introduce Roxas as chosen by the Keyblade, and it's just weird. Anyway, number 14 gives him a smile, and he's shocked that a girl will even acknowledge his existence. He then starts talking about how he had been around for about a week by that point, and that he had nothing beyond his name. Axel takes Blank Personality Boy on his first mission, and then treats him to ice cream. And that's why Axel's awesome. He gives people free ice cream! Also, Roxas can instantly memorize people's names, but somehow can't remember sea salt ice cream. Axel acts as the audience's surrogate and expresses disappointment in Roxas being a failure. Roxas goes on some more missions we don't see in this telling, and then fails to comprehend basic human interaction. Once again, Axel, being the absolute Chad he is, explains to the dweeb what friends are. Dude took one for the team and befriended Roxas so nobody else had to. He truly is the MVP. Axel is then sent to Castle Oblivion to hunt down some suspected traitors, but instead of being stuck with the non-entity for the entire time, he's assigned to work with Xion, the aforementioned 14th member of the organization. Now, every time we've seen her, she's had her hood up, but shortly in, she finally removes it to reveal herself as Goth Kyrie. I won't go too deep into character analysis of her just yet, since she's rather zombie-like, much akin to Roxas at first. But suffice to say, she does grow over the course of the story. I'll be blunt, however, she is basically the character Roxas should have been. Anyway, Roxas gets smacked around by Darkseid, who's here for his obligatory appearance, and drops the Keyblade, which jumps to Xion's hand, who then saves him. Now, I know this is starting to sound like a bad fanfic. She looks like another main character, is the secret member of the special group, and is even a Keyblade wielder. I swear, there is all an actual point to this that ties into the story very well. Anyway, Roxas takes her to the clock tower spot and gives her ice cream. She pretty quickly understands basic human interaction, and to be fair, the interactions here aren't bad at all. Roxas almost acts like an actual person here, though it's kind of funny that Xion seems to understand the value of friends better than he does. One could chalk that up to her origin compared to his, but that'd be giving away a major plot point that comes much later. Anyway, the events of Chain of Memories apparently begin and Axel is presumed dead. I think. Roxas goes into a coma, and it's somehow due to Sora running around in Castle Oblivion. Xemnas and Saïx then reveal that it was always intended to make Xion inherit the Keyblade. Xion continues going on missions, but visits Roxas after each one, until he wakes up. This seems to be due to the events of Chain of Memories coming to an end. Anyway, Axel pops up alive and well. He seems to do this a lot, doesn't he? And pokes fun at Roxas for being worried about him, since no buddies aren't supposed to have hearts. Except they do, but that's just more typical Kingdom Hearts convolution. Sayax and Axel have a conversation that somewhat suggests that Sayax was actually trying to get Axel killed, but it's not entirely clear. Or maybe I'm just thicker than a concrete omelet. Axel, Xion, and Roxas begin going on missions and spending time together, and it's here that I thought there was actually a crap ton of editing mistakes, but it's surprisingly a really clever bit of storytelling. Throughout these sequences, we constantly see Xion's hood switching from up and down with no real explanation at first. I legitimately thought this was just terrible continuity because of how distracting it is, but surprisingly, it was meant to be distracting, and it is explained later on. Xion expresses concern that she'll be seen as useless since she suddenly lost the ability to use the Keyblade, and without it, she can't do her job. Axel suggests that until she can regain the use of it, Roxas and her should exclusively work together so he can cover for her. We also get an adorable moment of Xion asking Axel if they're friends now, and him getting embarrassed. I want to stop here and mention something regarding as to why I like Xion quite a bit, and not Roxas. Throughout all of this, Xion is constantly asking and trying to understand things. She's constantly trying to be useful and actively taking action. She has self-motivation, and her personal desires do grow over time. While Roxas was in that coma, she would come to visit him every day, and after each mission would bring him seashells, and did so out of her own volition. It's silly, sure, but it makes her enjoyable to watch. Yes, she has moments where she might mope around a little and not know what to do, but typically when something happens, she tries to act on it. We then see Naminé talking about how she can't wake Sora up because fragments of him are within someone else, and if his memories become a part of hers, she'd never survive it. Pretty obvious, but the she's referring to is Xion. Xion soon asks Axel about Castle Oblivion out of the blue, wondering why everyone gets sent there except her and Roxas, a question that visually unnerves Axel. She winds up not feeling well and almost falls off the clock tower, but is saved by Roxas. Shortly after, Axel suggests they all go to the beach for a change of pace. However, Axel is sent to go clear out the organization's research from Castle Oblivion, and Xion follows him. We find out that she's been there before, and that she's remembering things from before she was a nobody. Axel finds her and tries to get her to go home, clearly distressed by her being there. She suggests that she had met before, that she had been born there. She runs off by herself to find out the truth of who she is, while Axel goes to meet Roxas, where we retread the opening. We get a strange conversation where Sayax tells Axel he's going to be working with Xion for a while, and Axel himself seems to imply he killed a few members of the organization to make things easier to find out what Xemnas is really up to for Sayax. Shortly after, Sayax tells him that he's getting too attached to Roxas and Xion. Meanwhile, Xion's been moping around after an encounter with Riku leaves her defeated and depressed, and he warns her to stay away from Organization 13. He also remarks on her face, "This is important," and when asked why he's dressed like an organization member, he mentions that he wants to ensure that Sora sleeps in peace. To further add on to Xion's kicked puppy face, Sayax insults her and says she should never have been made. Roxas tries to cheer her up, but because he sucks at being a person, she gets annoyed and gives him his ice cream back. She winds up in a coma-esque state herself, with Roxas trying to do the same seashell thing she did for him, while Axel confronts Sayax about what's going on. Xion wakes up after having a dream about the moment when Sora loses his heart in Kingdom Hearts 1. While out with Axel and Roxas, she again collapses, seeing visions of the events of the first game. Sayax mocks her, resulting in Axel finally snapping at him.
Keep your mouth shut.
Bruh.
Roxas seems a little bit surprised at this usually easygoing friend being so worried about Xion, and asks why. Axel has to explain to the little nitwit that it's because the three of them are friends. Xion wakes up giggling upon hearing this, and not gonna lie, that moment is kinda made of pure duh. Not long after, Axel does some research and finds out what seems to be a connection between Naminé and Xion. Meanwhile, we see Roxas absolutely freaking out at a strange vision, only to learn the one hallucinating is actually Xion, who seems to be shifting between multiple appearances of other characters. Riku finds her and learns that Sora's memories are being siphoned out through Xion through Naminé. As Roxas and Shion become more their own entities, Sora's memories begin to disappear more. It's also here we learn of the thing I thought was a continuity error before. Shion had no face originally. Because Roxas is Sora's nobody, he began to see her as Goth Kairi because of the connection between them, and as things continue, more see her through Sora's memories. And as it turns out, the only way to save Sora is basically to erase Roxas and Shion. Shion comes to the realization that she simply wishes to continue living with her friends, but because of her nature, she can't be allowed to exist. Having gone missing, Roxas and Axel begin to search for her. Weeks pass, and eventually Axel explains that he recently found out that Shion originated from Castle Oblivion. They go to look for her there, where Roxas begins to weaken, and Axel is forced to retreat. Shion and Riku appear in front of them, only to teleport away. That was an odd moment. She eventually returns to face Roxas, who tries to convince her to return, but she draws her Keyblade and threatens him. Axel arrives to protect Roxas, and a fight breaks out. She gets distracted and is knocked unconscious by him. We soon find out Axel is questioning his own actions, unsure if he's doing the right thing after a conversation with Saïx, who asks him why he would try to save the puppet. Roxas confronts Xemnas, who tells him about the connection between them and Sora. He then threatens Roxas to keep up his duties if he wants Shion to remain as she is. Axel tries to talk to Roxas, who just ignores him. Good friend you are there, Roxas! More time passes, and Shion returns to her duties. Roxas calls Axel a jerk before she explains to him that if he hadn't intervened, then they wouldn't be together, and reminds him that the two of them are best friends. She eventually asks Axel if something's wrong with Roxas, who then reveals the whole truth to her, that she was created as a puppet who was always meant to steal Sora's powers from his nobody. When she asks what she should do, he tells her that's up for her to decide, that she's more than a puppet, and reminds her that they are friends. She proceeds to ask him about Sora. We then find that Xemnas plans on having Roxas and Shion face each other so he can manipulate the survivor and have Sora's powers under his control. Shion recalls being rescued by Riku, who told her that her memories belong to Sora. Shion tells him that she can't return those memories because her friends still need her. He's surprisingly understanding and tells her that she needs to think on it, but also asks that she does what's best not only for her, but for those around her as well. Because of the rising tensions at the organization, Roxas suggests the three of them just run away. They realize they don't really have anywhere to go, but they do reaffirm their friendships. Unfortunately, Sora's memories remain static and won't restore properly, forcing Riku to be sent to be sure that he wakes up. Meanwhile, Axel is told to stop meddling because they only need one or the other, leading to him being very clearly distressed again. Eventually, Xigbar forces a fight with Shion, mocking her when he sees Ventus' face on her. Again, I really love how cleverly that's woven into the plot. Xigbar doesn't really know Sora at this point, but he did know Ventus, who was asleep within Sora's heart, which is also why Roxas looks like Ventus. That sounds really confusing, but it actually works. After beating Xigbar, Shion apologizes to Axel and asks him to let her go when he tries to stop her. He realizes she plans on sacrificing herself to save Roxas, but reluctantly allows her to leave. Upon returning to the organization, Roxas overhears Axel being chewed out for letting Shion escape. He confronts Axel, asking how he could let her go like that, who explains to him how she's slowly draining him of his existence, and that if things continue, he'll cease to exist. Roxas instead throws a temper tantrum and doesn't even try to listen before running off. Axel laments that he couldn't get his friend to understand. Comprehending what's at stake, Shion meets up with Riku, who tells her to meet with Naminé. Axel is sent to retrieve her. Roxas finally has a moment of not being a dumbass, and says maybe it's better that she not return, since she's seen only as a puppet by the others. He then grills Axel on if he knew what she was this whole time, and never told him. He then realizes the organization intends on getting rid of him, saying Axel probably felt the same way. Axel tells him, again, that he's his best friend. Roxas proceeds to yell at him, claiming friends are supposed to be honest with each other, and tries to get the truth out of him. Axel tells him that knowing the truth isn't always for the best. When Axel asks him to trust him on this, Roxas tells him that he doesn't, and can't, and storms off. What a dick! Don't get me wrong, I understand him having issues with Axel not telling him everything, but the guy is clearly troubled by what's going on and is stuck in a bad place in all this. He tries to convince Roxas that if he leaves, he'll be killed. Roxas, being the edgy self-insert OC of a 12-year-old that he is, tries to act cool by saying, "No one would miss me." You know, to his best friend. The one literally trying to keep him from running off, because he'd miss him. Never mind what I said about him being almost tolerable, he's just acting like a raging butthole at this point. Shion and Namine finally meet. Namine reaffirms that should Shion return her memories to Sora, she'll cease to exist. But Shion understands, feeling a desire to return to her source, even at her own loss. Axel shows up and Shion goes to confront him. She tells him this is for the best, and he agrees that he thought that too, but hates the idea of it. He hates the idea of her being destroyed over this, and asks how she knows it's for the best, how everyone can think they're right. She draws her keyblade, insisting that he not hold back, prompting Axel to have a rare moment of completely losing his temper, sick of those around him not listening. He wins, but sustains some pretty noticeable damage in the process. We cut to Roxas sitting on the clock tower, moping and whining. Surprise, surprise. As per usual, the Lord of Non-Motivation did nothing after stomping around throwing a tantrum, just like he always does. Yeah, I know I'm always harping on Roxas, but he genuinely annoys me with how he almost never does anything unless forced to. And yes, this was my gripe with him in Kingdom Hearts 2 as well. This isn't some retcon by this game. He did nothing but mope and whimper during his elongated tutorial in Kingdom Hearts 2. Despite this, we do have a nice moment of Shion plopping down next to him and giving him an ice cream without saying a single word. It's a genuinely good sequence where they just sit in silence on the clock tower eating ice cream like normal. That is, until Shion tells him there's no time left. She removes her hood, revealing Sora's face in a truly disturbing moment, telling him that she's nothing more than a puppet meant to play a role given to her, and that she's going to force him to become a part of her too. It's truly unsettling, seeing her resigned to this fate. She transforms into some kind of armored monster, and the two begin a battle that neither wanted. In the end, Shion loses and falls to the ground, memories of her beginning to fade from Roxas. She smiles sadly and tells him he'll be better off now, revealing that she ultimately forced him to kill her.
It was my choice to go away now. Better that than to do nothing and let Xemnas have his way.
And right here, this line right here is why I like Shion but not Roxas. Both eventually wind up a part of Sora again, but while Roxas just screams and cries about how unfair it all is, Shion made a choice and acted on it. She had self-motivation, and it makes her a much more compelling character by contrast. And no, taking Shion out and giving her story to Roxas wouldn't have worked, because in Kingdom Hearts 2, that was how Roxas was established. When things went wrong, he bitched and moaned, and in the end, did nothing, and it's absolutely infuriating. And trying to change that would have just made me wonder how he went from self-motivated to complete wiener. In the end, Roxas needed both Ventus and Shion to justify his existence in the series. Both of these characters work fine on their own, but Roxas is such a non-entity with no momentum of his own that it's not even funny. Anyway, as Shion begins fading away, she expresses the joy of having met this dweeb and Axel, prompting Roxas to suddenly remember her and say the single most cringe-inducing line in the entire franchise.
Shion! Who else will I have ice cream with?
Just one time! Can you not be so frickin' stupid? Just one damn time! Okay, I understand what they were probably trying to go with here. It's supposed to be a heartfelt moment of Roxas begging his friend not to disappear. But again, it just makes Roxas come off like the selfish prick he always does. For one thing, how about your other best friend, Axel? You know, the one who first started eating ice cream with you, the one who begged you not to run off because he didn't want you to die. For another, stop thinking about yourself for one moment, you asshole. This is another issue I had with him in Kingdom Hearts 2. For Roxas, it was always a case of me, every single time. Yeah, I know he's probably not meant to be just thinking of himself here, but because this line sounds exactly how he always does, and how often he only thinks of himself, it really makes him obnoxious. It would have been so easy to make this less irritating by having him say something like, "Did you want to eat ice cream together forever?" Oh, it's still a cringy line, don't get me wrong. I wince just typing that in the script, let alone voicing it, but it makes him sound a whole lot less needy, and more like he's actually thinking about his friend who's literally dying in his arms, instead of himself. I'm sorry for that mini rant, but every time he does just about anything, it always feels like he only cares about how much he can benefit from it, and it makes me want to jab him in the ass with a fireplace poker. Yeah, I know there's a few moments that aren't like that, but I swear the majority of the time, he's just kind of a selfish prick and not in an endearing way. Meanwhile, we see Axel lamenting his actions, opening an envelope showing a contest-winning ice cream stick that Roxas gave him. Yeah, I know, I just bitched about how selfish Roxas was and then this happens, but I still won't forgive him for the ice cream line, especially because of this. You can't say, "Who will I eat ice cream with?" after you gave your other best friend ice cream and... At long last, we come across Roxas confronting Riku from the Another Side, Another Story scene from the bonus ending of the first game, with Riku determined to stop Roxas from getting wrecked like the idiot he is in order to save Sora, but showing sympathy at the loss of Shion. We then leave where Kingdom Hearts 2 began, with the world's most irritating tutorial as the end credits play to the tune of Sanctuary once more. There's a post-credits scene of Roxas in front of Sora's sleep chamber thing, and the story ends. And that leaves me asking, was 358 over 2 days worth watching? Is this a good story? Actually, yeah! I know I complained about Roxas for a large chunk of it, and I still loathe the little shit, but I'll be damned if I said I didn't genuinely enjoy Shion and Axel. Their banter is really good, and between the three of them, it's mostly fine. There's a legitimately decent plot in there, despite Roxas rubbing me the wrong way the entire time. And as for the rest of things, it's pretty high quality. The music is, as expected, fantastic. The graphics and animation redone for this movie look gorgeous, and the voice acting is phenomenal. As for a way of retelling the story, I'm told a lot of Shion's personality is actually left out from the game version, since this doesn't have the mission dialogue and such, which is funny because I don't really think it's needed. She's a pretty likable character throughout, and I didn't have a hard time sympathizing with her. Despite the problems, the story is, at its core, actually just a story about three friends who wanted to stick together. So, which version of the story do I recommend? Well, I'd honestly just say this one, but the guy who gave me that amazing footage of his fight with Lingering Will in my Kingdom Hearts 2 review is pointing a gun at me to say the manga. And, to be fair, I kind of see why. It has perhaps overly cutesy art, though by no means ugly, and lots of goofy expressions, but it does condense the story into a more digestible manner, while hitting all the notes it needs to, and giving a bit more of a lighthearted vibe, allowing some of the lesser characters to have moments of levity. At the very least, what I've seen of it is miles better than the first Kingdom Hearts manga, which I actually own. Its primary flaw is the cutesy artwork doesn't work well for the action scenes, which look like they cut a few too many corners. But I'm not done yet. There's still 2 more movies left in this review. Thankfully, these should be a fair bit quicker to jump through. Next up is Kingdom Hearts Recoded.
Goodbye.
Oh, thank Herc, I'm alright done with this one. No, if only. Recoded starts off with the ending of Chain of Memories, with Sora's farewell to Naminé. After a brief recap of the events of the first game, Chain of Memories, in Kingdom Hearts 2, Jiminy finds the journal that was filled with only one sentence, thank Naminé, now has a second phrase. The hurting will be mended when you return to end it. We have Chip and Dale try putting the diary through a computer, only to find it's filled with bugs. Because that's how books work. So to fix the data, they head to Radiant Garden to have Tron and Sid fix it. Oh, wait, no, that'd be halfway intelligent, and that goes against everything this turd of a plot stands for. Instead, they make it Data Sora to do the job for them. Even more confusing is that they use the data from KH1 Sora, the one who came from the journal that got deleted and overrun with bugs in the first place. Why not use the one from the Kingdom Hearts 2 journal where he's super powerful? Data Sora goes chasing after someone in an Organization 13 outfit, and from here, it basically retreads Kingdom Hearts in its entirety. That's not a joke! This story is basically just a dumber version of Kingdom Hearts 1. Oh sure, there's some okay banter between Data Sora and Data Riku, but most of it is a boring slog. Also, Maleficent and Pete, the real ones, are there looking for a MacGuffin that won't be relevant for several entries, and even then only barely. Mickey hops in too to help Sora defeat Data Darkseid. They pretend to have character development and reset the journal to its pre-glitch status. Yeah, That's no joke. They reset the journal, which deletes Data Sora's memory, and any half-assed development he had, which wouldn't matter anyway since he's not the actual Sora, will follow in every other entry, gets reset. But wait, there's more! Now that the data's been reset, they can see the data is incomplete, so they have to do it again! Except now it's a rehash of Chain of Memories, without the fun parts, and a whole bunch of data Roxas. That's right, it's a rehash of a story that was itself 75% rehash, with a rehash of the Roxas fight from Kingdom Hearts 2 after a story that was a rehash. And they cap that off with a rehash of the ending of Chain of Memories. Also, Mickey gets a serious contact high from being around Data Sora too much. We see a recollection of Roxas memories in a brief format so they can shove a Shion cameo in there, followed by Ventus memories so they can have a cameo of the BBS trio. Hi Aqua! And that's basically the ending, followed by a credits sequence. Sometime later, we see Mickey sending the letter from Kingdom Hearts 2's ending to Sora. Then he meets up with Yun Sid, giving a brief recap of what Xehanort's plan might be, tells him to bring Sora and Riku to him for Keyblade Master training, setting up Dream Drop Distance. We also see the Organization 13 members unconscious in their human forms back at Radiant Garden, meeting with a young Xehanort because reasons. Good grief, this story is dumb! When people say to skip this one, do it! The only parts that are actually relevant to anything are the beginning and the end, and they're both not that important. Hell, you can literally skip the both and still not really be lost at all. As for the production values, yeah, it looks and sounds fine. Sora's voice can be a little bit grating, but isn't quite as obnoxious as DDD, and everyone else sounds good. But it's not worth slogging through. And why?
It was boring, Huey.
A healthier, less awful way to spend the next few hours would be to play in traffic. Skip, skip, skip! And now we come to the final pre-Kingdom Hearts 3 entry. Kingdom Hearts Key back cover. This is a prequel that predates even Birth by Sleep, and is a retelling of the events of the mobile game. It shows the interactions of the Master of Masters and his pupils leading up to the events of the Keyblade War. Also, he and another dressed like Organization 13 members for some reason. And, I'm not gonna lie, I have no clue what's going on in this. There's something about spirits called Chirithi, which turn dark and become nightmares when around someone who's malicious, thus signifying they've given in to the darkness, and I think the Master disappears and everyone suspects everyone else, but it seems like the Master himself was the one who led to the suspicions, but nobody thinks of that, and one of them has a box that's not ever supposed to be opened, that I think pertains to the ending of Kingdom Hearts 3, and seriously, this seems so disconnected in its telling that I've watched it twice now, and still don't really get it. I always wind up zoning out, and the entire thing seems to go in one ear and out the other. Frankly, I don't think it adds up to much. Maybe you guys would get more out of that than I did, but I don't know. Visually, it is a step up from everything prior except 0.2, since it uses the updated Unreal Engine graphics, so that's nice. Unfortunately, most of it takes place in fairly unremarkable locations. The audio is fine as always, the music is nice, and the voice acting is still pretty solid, but nothing here really feels like it's particularly fleshed out, just that it's going, ooh, epic foreshadowing! That being said, I somewhat recommend it because it won't bore to tears like Recoded did, and it doesn't overstay its welcome, just being about an hour long. I'm just not sure you'll remember any of it afterwards. So, to sum it up, 358 over 2 days has a good story, even though Roxas still sucks. Apparently, the absolute law is to read the manga. Recoded has a garbage story, and Data Roxas also still sucks. Skip it entirely, and you will miss nothing. Back cover has things happen, and I don't remember any of it. Can I do my Kingdom Hearts 3 review now? I want to do my Kingdom Hearts 3 review now. Thank you guys so much for watching. Agree? Disagree? Even if you disagree, I still hate Roxas and there's nothing you can do to change my mind. Not even watching a different review on my channel. But that can at least make me like you.